My sister May always said I'd never amount to anything. At our family BBQ last summer, she announced to everyone that I was raising losers just like myself. 20 relatives laughed while holding their drinks and paper plates. I forced myself to smile, my face burning with humiliation. Then my 8-year-old son Colby cleared his throat and asked if he should read Aunt May's text from last night, the one where she called her own kids mistakes. The burger she was holding hit the concrete, ketchup splattering across her designer sandals, and suddenly nobody was laughing anymore. But let me back up because you need to understand who we all are and why this moment changed everything for our family. I'm Verona, 35 years old, a single mother who works as a registered nurse at Columbia Memorial Hospital. My son, Colby, is 8, the kind of kid who reads mystery novels instead of playing video games, who notices everything but says little, who has this quiet wisdom that sometimes catches me off guard. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment where the air conditioning works half the time and the neighbors play music too loud on weekends. But we've made it our home. My sister May is 7 years older than me, married to Dennis, who owns 3 car dealerships across the state. They live in a house with 6 bedrooms, though only 4 people live there. May doesn't work unless you count organizing charity galas where she can show off her latest designer purchases. She has 2 kids, Brock, who just turned 16 and speaks mostly in grunts, and Thea, 14, who's developed her mother's talent for cutting remarks but none of her social grace. Our mother, Pearl, turned 68 this year. She still lives in the same house where May and I grew up, a modest ranch-style home with a big backyard where she grows tomatoes and holds these family gatherings that she insists will keep us all connected. She means well, but these events usually turn into May's personal showcase, while I serve as her favorite target. My younger brother Jace works construction, shows up when he can, and has mastered the art of avoiding May's commentary by arriving late and leaving early. Smart man. That particular Sunday in July started like every family gathering at Grandma Pearl's house. The Texas heat was already oppressive by 10 in the morning when I arrived with Colby and my homemade potato salad, the one I'd finished preparing at 3 a.m. after getting home from a double shift. May's Tesla was already parked in the driveway, gleaming like a monument to success. The moment we walked through the back gate, May's voice carried across the yard. She was holding court near the pool, wine glass in hand despite the early hour, telling our cousin Robert about their recent vacation to Cabo. Her laugh, bright and sharp, cut through the morning air when she spotted me. "Verona, you actually made it. I was just telling Dennis you'd probably cancel again. You know how it is with single mothers. Always some emergency or another." Dennis nodded absently from his position at the grill, already focused on arranging burger patties with the concentration of a surgeon. He rarely spoke at these gatherings, having learned that silence was safer than engaging with May's commentary. Colby immediately went to help Grandma Pearl hang paper lanterns along the fence, his careful hands making sure each one was evenly spaced. He carried his current book tucked under his arm, something about a detective solving mysteries in old London. May noticed, of course. She notices everything that she can turn into ammunition. "Still reading those dusty old books, Colby? Brock just got the latest VR gaming system. Maybe you could come over and try living in this century sometime." Brock looked up from his phone long enough to smirk. Thea laughed, the sound an exact replica of her mother's. I watched Colby's shoulders tighten slightly, but he kept working on the lanterns, pretending not to hear. The yard filled up quickly. Uncle Tommy arrived with his new girlfriend, someone half his age who looked uncomfortable the moment she realized this wasn't the casual BBQ she'd expected. Cousin Robert brought his family, his twin daughters, immediately running to the pool. Great Aunt Dolores settled into a lawn chair with her knitting, her eyes sharp behind her thick glasses, watching everything while pretending to focus on her needles. This was our family, a collection of personalities that orbited around May's son, drawn by some mixture of obligation, genuine affection for Grandma Pearl, and the morbid fascination of watching May perform. And perform she did, every gathering a one-woman show where she played the role of the successful sister, the perfect mother, the winner in life's invisible competition that only she seemed to be scoring. Little did any of us know that within 2 hours, my quiet 8-year-old son would bring down her entire performance with just a few sentences and a notebook full of truth. The July heat made everything shimmer in Grandma Pearl's backyard, creating waves of distortion above the concrete patio that made the whole scene feel like a memory, even as it was happening. I stood at the picnic table, arranging the potato salad I'd made during those quiet hours when the rest of the world slept, when my aching feet from the hospital shift couldn't keep me from preparing something special for this gathering I'd been dreading for weeks. Being a single mom working double shifts at Columbia Memorial meant I missed a lot of these family events, something my sister May never let me forget. Each absence became another mark against me in her mental ledger of my failures, evidence of my inability to balance life properly the way she did. "Verona, honey, that smells wonderful," Grandma Pearl said, squeezing my shoulder as she passed. Her touch was gentle, understanding. She knew what these gatherings cost me emotionally, though we never spoke about it directly. I watched Colby help her string paper lanterns along the fence, his small hands careful and precise. He'd been different lately, quieter than usual, more observant. Last week, after May had called to criticize my decision to let him join the library's summer reading program instead of expensive sports camps, he'd asked me why Aunt May always made me cry. I told him sometimes adults are complicated, which felt like both the truth and a lie wrapped together. "Verona, you actually made it," May announced from across the yard, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for me, sweet on the surface with poison underneath. "I was just telling Dennis you'd probably cancel again. You know, work, emergency, or whatever excuse single mothers use." She glided over in her designer sundress, one that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a wine glass that caught the morning sun. Everything about May was carefully curated, from her professionally highlighted hair to her subtle cosmetic improvements that she claimed were just good skincare. "I said I'd be here," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. 20 years of practice had taught me that defending myself only gave her more ammunition. The family continued arriving in waves. Uncle Tommy's new girlfriend looked increasingly overwhelmed as she realized this wasn't the casual BBQ she'd expected, but rather a carefully orchestrated social performance. Cousin Robert's twins splashed in the pool while their parents settled into lawn chairs with beers. Great Aunt Dolores took her usual spot under the umbrella, her knitting needles clicking in rhythm as her sharp eyes tracked every interaction. "Mom, the WIFI password?" Thea demanded without looking up from her phone, having claimed the best chair in the shade. "Same as always, sweetheart," May responded, then turned her attention back to me. At least they know how to use technology properly, unlike some kids who still read paper books. Her gaze landed on Colby, who had settled onto the porch steps with his mystery novel. He was reading about Sherlock Holmes this week, completely absorbed in a world of deduction and logic, finding comfort in stories where observant outsiders became heroes. "Reading helps with cognitive development," I said quietly. "So does social interaction," May countered. "Brock is president of his debate team." Thea's in advanced placement everything. They're building their futures while Colby's living in the past. Dennis appeared at the grill, flipping burgers with mechanical precision. He nodded at me, a brief acknowledgement that passed for warmth in his repertoire of expressions. I'd long suspected he'd learned that emotional absence was easier than engaging with May's constant commentary on everyone's shortcomings. "Where's Jace?" Grandma Pearl asked, trying to shift the conversation. "Running late as usual," May said, "though at least he has the excuse of actual work. Construction pays surprisingly well these days. Not as well as Dennis's dealerships, of course, but better than nursing." The jab landed exactly where she intended. I made $60,000 a year, saving lives, coming home with aching feet and sometimes blood on my scrubs, while May made nothing and complained about the exhaustion of planning charity luncheons. Brock finally looked up from his phone. "Dad, when are we eating?" "I have practice at 2. "Practice for what?" I asked, trying to show interest. "Lacrosse," May answered for him. Division I scouts are already watching him. We're investing in his future, making sure he has every opportunity to succeed. She paused, sipping her wine before delivering the next blow. Of course, not everyone can provide these opportunities. Some people are just destined to struggle, generation after generation. It's not really their fault, it's just how life works. The morning heat grew heavier, pressing down on all of us as May's words settled into the space between the family members, creating invisible boundaries between those she deemed successful and those she'd already written off as failures. The tension built steadily as more family arrived, each new person adding weight to the atmosphere that was already thick with May's judgment. She started her usual performance, talking loudly about their recent vacation to Cabo, her new Tesla, how Brock had gotten into an elite prep school that required an entrance exam and an interview. Of course, the tuition is astronomical, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. $40,000 a year. But Dennis and I believe education is everything. You can't put a price on giving your children the best possible future. She looked directly at me as she said this. Knowing that Colby attended public school, knowing that $40,000 was nearly my entire yearly take-home pay after taxes. Grandma Pearl tried to intervene from her seat near the garden. May, that's enough. We're here to enjoy family time. Oh, Mom, I'm just being honest. Verona knows I love her, but look at her choices. Nursing? Really? When she could have married Richard when she had the chance. He's a partner at a law firm now, you know, has 3 kids and a house in Westchester. Now she's alone, working nights, barely making ends meet. Richard. She always brought up Richard, the man I dated in college, who'd wanted me to drop out and support his career. The man who'd told me nursing was beneath someone with my intelligence, who'd planned out my entire life without asking what I wanted. I gripped my lemonade glass tighter, feeling the condensation slip between my fingers. I love my job, May. I help people. Last week, I saved a child's life during a code blue. That matters to me. Help people? May laughed, the sound sharp and cutting through the summer air like a blade. You can't even help yourself. And poor Colby, growing up without a father figure, spending his summers reading instead of at camps or traveling. It's just sad, really. The conversation took a darker turn when May noticed Colby's shoes. He was wearing sneakers I'd found at Goodwill, practically new, a brand name that someone had donated probably after their kid outgrew them in a month. They were clean, comfortable, and he loved them because they were blue, his favorite color. Oh my God, Verona, are those from Goodwill? Her voice rose to a pitch that made everyone stop talking and turn to look. You're dressing your child in other people's garbage? They're perfectly good shoes, I managed to say, my voice barely steady. This is what I mean about cycles of poverty, May continued, now addressing her audience. It starts with small compromises. Used shoes become normal, library books instead of buying new ones, public school instead of investing in real education. Before you know it, you're raising another generation that thinks this is acceptable. Thea looked up from her phone. Mom's right. It's kind of gross wearing someone else's shoes. Like, what if they had foot fungus? Colby's face went red. He closed his book carefully, his small fingers trembling slightly as he placed his bookmark. May wasn't finished. She stood up, holding her wine glass high like she was making a toast at one of her charity galas. The designer bracelets on her wrist caught the light, sending little sparkles across the patio like scattered stars. This is exactly what I mean, everyone. She's raising a bunch of losers just like herself. No ambition, no standards, no future. Working class people who think reading library books and wearing thrift store clothes is enough. It's not cruel to say it, it's honest. Someone needs to break the cycle, and clearly Verona won't. The laughter that followed felt like needles under my skin. Cousin Robert chuckled into his beer. Uncle Tommy's girlfriend tittered nervously, unsure if she should join in. Even teenage Brock looked up from his phone to smirk, his expression a younger version of his mother's superiority. Uncle Dennis stayed silent at the grill but didn't defend me, his silence as damning as laughter. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile, my cheeks burning with humiliation. This was the worst it had ever been, the most public, the most cruel. Around me, my family, people who had known me since birth, were laughing at my failures as a mother, as a person, as a human being worthy of basic respect. At least my kids will have trust funds, May continued, emboldened by the response. They'll have choices, options. They won't have to work themselves to death for scraps like some people. She looked at me when she said, some people, her eyes glittering with the particular satisfaction she got from these moments. This was her drug, her high, these public demonstrations of her superiority over the little sister who had chosen love over money, purpose over prestige, and had paid for it ever since. Colby set down his book very carefully on the porch step, marking his page with the precision of someone who had learned that taking care of small things mattered when you couldn't afford to replace them. He stood up, all 4 feet 2 inches of him, and walked to the center of the patio where everyone could see him. His worn sneakers made soft sounds against the concrete, and in that moment I saw him differently, not as my little boy, but as someone making a choice. "Aunt May," he said, his young voice clear and steady, cutting through the lingering laughter. "Can I ask you something?" May barely glanced at him, still riding the high of her performance. "What is it, sweetie? Going to tell us about your little book? Share some ancient wisdom from the 1800s? "No, I was wondering if I should read something else. You know how Mom's phone sometimes shows notifications on the kitchen counter when she's getting ready for work?" I froze, my lemonade glass halfway to my lips. What was he doing? Colby never spoke up at these gatherings, had learned like me that staying quiet meant staying safe from May's attention. "Yesterday, when you texted Mom at 11:47 p.m., I saw it. The message was pretty long. May's wine glass stopped moving. The light caught it, suspended in air like time had paused. I don't text your mother. We're not exactly chatting buddies. You do, actually. From your other phone, the one you use when Uncle Dennis isn't around, the one with the pink case that you hide in your purse. Should I read what you wrote?" The backyard went silent except for the sizzling grill, the sound of meat cooking suddenly loud in the absence of conversation. Even the twins in the pool had stopped splashing, sensing the shift in atmosphere the way children can feel storms coming. Dennis turned from the grill slowly, spatula still in hand. What other phone? May's face underwent a series of rapid transformations, from confusion to anger to something that looked like fear. "This is ridiculous. He's making things up. You know how kids are with their imaginations, especially ones who read too much fiction." Colby pulled out a small notebook from his pocket, the one I'd bought him at the dollar store for his story ideas. He kept it with him always, jotting down observations and plot twists for the mysteries he wanted to write someday. I wrote it down because Mom was crying and I wanted to understand why grown-ups say mean things when they're actually sad. "You had no right to read private messages," May started, her voice rising. "You had no right to make Mom cry," Colby responded simply. "Every time she comes home from here, she cries. She thinks I'm asleep, but I'm not. I see her sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. Last month after Easter, she cried for an hour." Grandma Pearl stood up slowly, her arthritis making the movement painful. "May, what did you write to my daughter?" "Nothing, Mom." "This is all being blown out of proportion." The kid's confused. "I'm not confused," Colby said. "I have a good memory." That's what Mrs. Patterson says at school. She says I have exceptional recall. Do you want to know what exceptional recall means, Aunt May? It means I remember exactly what your message said. Brock had put down his phone completely now, staring at his mother. Thea had stopped examining her nails and was watching with her mouth slightly open. The entire family had formed a circle without meaning to, everyone leaning in, waiting. "This is inappropriate," May said, but her voice had lost its commanding tone. "Dennis, tell them this is inappropriate. A child shouldn't be involved in adult matters." Dennis didn't move. "What other phone, May?" Colby looked at me then, and I saw the question in his eyes. He was asking permission, even now, even after May had humiliated us. This was still my choice. I could stop him, preserve the family peace, let May win again, or I could let my 8-year-old son stand up for us in a way I'd never been able to stand up for myself. I thought about all the times I'd stayed silent, all the family gatherings where I'd smiled through the insults, laughed off the cruel comments, pretended her words didn't cut deep enough to leave scars. I thought about what I was teaching Colby by accepting this treatment, what kind of man he would become if he learned that keeping peace was more important than speaking truth. I nodded at him, just once, a small movement that felt like the biggest decision I'd ever made. "Go ahead, baby," I said quietly. "Read what she wrote." Colby opened his small notebook, the pages rustling in the quiet backyard. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what was about to come. He looked down at his careful handwriting, the letters neat and precise the way his teacher had taught him. You wrote, "Dennis found out about Craig. I'm drowning here. My kids are mistakes I can't undo. Brock failed 3 classes this semester, and Thea's therapist says she has severe anxiety from the pressure I put on her. At least you chose your path. I'm trapped pretending everything's perfect when it's all falling apart. Your life looks like freedom compared to mine." May's burger slipped from her hand, hitting the concrete with a wet splat. Ketchup and mustard splattered across her designer sandals, spreading like a crime scene on the patio. Her face had gone white, the carefully applied bronzer suddenly standing out like war paint on pale skin. You can't," May stammered, her usual eloquence deserting her completely. "There's more," Colby said calmly, flipping to the next page, "about how you cry in your Tesla after dropping the kids at school. About the pills you take, the ones you told Dennis were vitamins but are really for anxiety. About how you wish you were brave like Mom." Brock's phone hit the ground with a crack. "Mom? What's he talking about? Who's Craig? And I didn't fail 3 classes, I failed 4. You told Dad I got all A's." Uncle Dennis's face transformed from confused to understanding to something darker. The spatula in his hand bent under his grip. "Craig? Your personal trainer, Craig? The one who texts you about workout schedules at midnight?" Thea started crying, the tears cutting channels through her carefully applied makeup that May had let her start wearing at 13. "Mom, is that why you're always yelling at us? Because we're mistakes? Is that why nothing I do is ever good enough? Last week you threw away my report card because I got an A- in math. You said I was an embarrassment." "Stop it," May hissed, but her voice broke on the words. "Everyone just stop it. This is a violation of privacy. This is illegal. I could sue." "For what?" Grandma Pearl asked quietly. "For a child telling the truth? For exposing the lies you've built your entire life on?" Colby continued reading, his voice steady like he was presenting a book report. "You also wrote that you're jealous of Mom because she chose her own life. Because when Richard wanted her to quit school, she said no, because she'd rather work double shifts than live in a cage. You said, Verona has something I'll never have. She has freedom and a son who loves her for who she really is, not for what she can buy him." The notebook closed with a soft sound that seemed to echo across the yard. Colby looked up at May, his eyes calm and direct. "You called us losers, but you're the one who lost. You lost yourself. You little brat!" May lunged forward, but Dennis caught her arm. "Don't you dare!" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare blame a child for your lies. 3 years, May. 3 years I've been asking about the credit card bills, the secret phone calls, the way you disappear for hours, and you made me think I was paranoid. Dennis, please, it's not what you think," May pleaded, her perfect facade cracking like expensive china. "The kids' grades? Their therapy? You told me they were thriving. You said Brock was Harvard material. You said Thea was perfectly adjusted. I needed help," Thea sobbed. "I begged Mom to let me see someone about my anxiety, and she only agreed if I promised not to tell you. She said it would make the family look weak." Cousin Robert stood up, his beer forgotten. "May, is this true? All of it?" Uncle Tommy's girlfriend whispered something about needing to leave. Great Aunt Dolores had stopped knitting entirely, her needles frozen mid-stitch. "You don't understand," May said desperately, looking around at the family she'd performed for all these years. The pressure to be perfect, to have the best of everything, to win at life. "None of you understand what that's like." "No," I said, finding my voice at last. "We don't understand that. We understand working hard, loving our families, and being honest about who we are. We understand that designer shoes and private schools mean nothing if you're empty inside." May's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair, her wine glass rolling across the patio, leaving a red trail like blood. Her perfect hair fell across her face, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister. Not the character she played, but the frightened woman underneath who had built a prison and called it success. The BBQ ended quickly after that. Dennis took the kids and left without saying goodbye, his jaw clenched tight as he guided Brock and Thea to his BMW. Thea was still crying, mascara running down her 14-year-old face. While Brock kept asking questions his father wouldn't answer. May tried to follow them, babbling explanations and apologies, but Dennis wouldn't even look at her. He just loaded the kids into the car and drove away, leaving May standing in the driveway in her stained designer sandals. The other relatives scattered like startled birds, suddenly remembering urgent appointments and previous commitments. Cousin Robert mumbled something about needing to get home. Uncle Tommy and his girlfriend practically ran to their car, and even Great Aunt Dolores packed up her knitting with unusual speed. Within 15 minutes, the backyard that had been full of laughter and cruel jokes was nearly empty. My brother Jace, who had arrived just in time to witness the aftermath, helped me pack up our things. He'd walked into the backyard as May was sobbing into her hands, and he'd pieced together what happened from the shell-shocked expressions on everyone's faces. "Remind me never to mess with Colby," he whispered, loading the cooler into my car. "Kid's got more courage than all of us combined." Grandma Pearl hugged Colby for a long time before we left, whispering something in his ear that made him smile. She squeezed my hand and said, "You're raising him right, Verona. Don't let anyone ever tell you different." In the car, I looked at my son through the rearview mirror. He had opened his book again, already lost in the world of Victorian London and brilliant detectives. The afternoon sun caught his hair, making it glow golden, and I was struck by how much older he looked than he had that morning. "How long have you known about those texts?" I asked as we pulled away from Grandma's house. "Since last month." I wasn't going to say anything, but when she called us losers and everyone laughed, I thought about the heroes in my books. They always stand up for what's right, even when they're scared. "Were you scared?" "Terrified," he admitted, looking up from his pages. My hands were shaking. "But Mom, you work 16-hour shifts to help sick people. You read to me every night, no matter how tired you are. You make Halloween costumes from scratch and know every teacher's name at my school. You helped Mrs. Chen next door when she broke her hip, bringing her groceries for 2 months. If that makes us losers, then I'd rather be a loser than whatever Aunt May is." 2 weeks later, Grandma Pearl called with updates. May and Dennis were getting divorced. The proceedings were ugly, with Dennis's lawyers discovering more lies than just the affair with Craig. Apparently, May had been hiding debt, had fabricated most of her charity work, and had been using pills she bought from someone at her gym. The kids were in therapy now, real therapy this time, not the kind where you just throw money at problems and hope they disappear. May sent me a text from her regular phone, the pink one she no longer had to hide. "I'm sorry for everything. You were always the strong one. I see that now." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward instead of back. I didn't need her apology, and I didn't need her validation. I had everything I needed in my small apartment with the temperamental air conditioning and the 2 loud neighbors. Colby and I were at the bookstore the following weekend when I told him we were taking a vacation. Nothing fancy, just a road trip to the Grand Canyon. We'd been saving coins in a jar for 2 years and finally had enough for gas and cheap motels. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? But I thought we couldn't afford it." Turns out we can afford more than I thought. When we stop spending energy on people who don't deserve it, when we stop letting others define our worth. He hugged me right there between mystery and science fiction, not caring who saw. "Mom, we're not losers, are we?" "No, baby. We're the heroes of our own story, and heroes don't need anyone else's validation. They just need courage, truth, and love." As we left the bookstore, Colby asked, "Do you think Aunt May will be okay?" I thought about my sister, alone in her big house with her designer clothes and empty life. Maybe. Sometimes people need to lose everything they pretended to have before they can find what's real. Like in books when the character has to reach rock bottom. Exactly like that. And that's the story of how my 8-year-old son taught a family of adults about courage, and how sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about a time when you or someone you know stood up to a bully, even when it was scary. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people finding their courage in unexpected moments. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're writing your own story every single day. Make it count.